me if you can see it.
Yeah, I see it.
Cool. So, how do you think you did in the tryouts?
I think the Circuit Royale game was okay, but the other two maps I made like too many just stupid mistakes.
Okay. What do you think about the team comps from like positioning and where your attention should be? So,
For this map,
yeah.
I think playing that far up, I just don't get any value. Cause we were trying to like take control of like the bridge and like past the bridge, which you can like see in the silhouette, and I just don't get any value playing like that. And then I also mess up and overextend and get punched down.
Mhm. That's it. And then if our team is a bit more coordinated, then we can actually set up a dive on these sealers. But for the most part, you're kind of just sitting high ground with the Ana and pocketing the Ash. So it's kind of ass on defense, not gonna lie. So I want to look at the offense. I feel like the offense is a lot more important. Okay, so what do you think? What's your idea of pushing in here?
I was thinking either we walk like bridge into like where their Doom is playing right now together, or my supports can like I could try walking like walking through the inside area and then right click up onto the high ground where the soldier is, and then I could bubble myself and my supports could walk there and like get a better position for like utility like nade and stuff. But
Okay. Um, because they only have a soldier and their tracer can never get up here because she always has to mark cart. I think the safer bet is just to come up here and wait for your team to push the cart and just force them to contest you on the high ground here, and then your team will be safe to cross once they contest the cart. So only if we can't get up to this high ground due to like time because the rotation is long. But if you TP before, then you can get up here. And then also, yeah, I don't know why Levi's down there on the low ground, but if we get everyone up here except for our Curie and Tracer, who are pushing cart, and you can bubble them for charge. But for the most part, we just want to abuse the fact that they can't punish or rotate into the high ground if the cart is pushed. So for you pocketing, even when like the default Gibraltar comp, it would still be the same idea where it's like you're just making space for us to get the high ground, for the core to get the high ground. So making sure that like yeah, you're not prioritizing the cart and you're prioritizing your making space for your team to go in first. And so this comp specifically is a bit awkward. I wanted to see how we would respond to adapting to understanding that our win con is getting our Ashe and our Ana up to this high ground, and where we could flip the map into the second part of the first point. So
and my tracer just pushed this car right.
yeah. Your Tracer will push cart the entire way through, and the only reason why you can push cart is to get charged in the beginning. And then as soon as that happens, I want you rotating either over here, like instantly, or through the high ground. And through the high ground is better on the default as soon as we come out. For the setup to get up height, you want to wait and calm with the Tracer. I don't think that it was very clean, the comms, but communicating with your Tracer, and this is pretty hard, it's trading aggro. And then especially if our Kyrie's with our Tracer, because then they make a choice. They lose the fight on high ground, and the cart gets pushed really far, or they mark. They win the fight on high ground and the cart gets pushed really far, and that's terrible for them. Or they lose the fight on high ground, they give up high ground, and then our Ashe is frying on the high ground and we don't have to do anything. You can also jump across if needed, but most likely not needed. You'll probably just be able to stand up here until their Doom forces card and you can match. But if we don't have this pressure over here where the Tracer and Doom doesn't have to mark, taking this high ground is going to be super hard. So all we have to do is wait for our Curie and Tracer, and then this fight will be super easy. Where, yeah, now the Doom is up top, and now it's super hard. And for our Curie and Tracer, it's kind of just like unoptimal for them, because they're not built to be taking the high ground and taking the close duel against the Doom. And so, because we don't have that pressure, the Doom is constantly marking up on the high ground, and it's super hard for us to get up. And so, especially if they're not directly marking you on the cart here, you can just force the cart and shred whoever touches. And then your other priority is keeping anyone on the high ground properly supported. So when the Doom goes in, you can bubble, or you can just use both of your bubbles for yourself. Or if the Curie and Tracer get pushed or decide to hard engage, you can look to bubble there. But yeah, otherwise, like the very beginning, where I feel like you're doing a lot of floating and not purposely positioning around the cart, and like end up chasing the enemies, or back here, where we can just progress this way faster by focusing on the objective and just playing slow and not rushing for the kills.
Okay.
Second and third point. So get to the second and third point. Okay, and then so in general, I want you greeting your cooldowns and playing very slow. You don't have to make things happen, because if we're playing together and rotating together, trading aggro properly and just keeping the comms up and using our cooldowns with leverage and deliberately against the enemies, and not having our cooldowns forced because our positioning and rotates are good, you should be able to just play very chill, play very positionally, and not have to run in or like hard initiate fights. So for example, you take this fight here, and then we should have been ult tracking it, so someone should have called it. They have the tree.
I've got you in my sight.
And your Curie also should have been able to TP up to you. But that happens twice, so after the
Now go get him.
on the second point, when that happens again, a reminder.
Yeah, I don't know.
There is no cost to if you're just standing up here and waiting for them to like have to mark cart and drop cart. Even if they use tree and visor, unless it's after we drop, we can LOS it. And even if it is after we drop, that's like their entire kit. And so if they have to kill us during that, and we have both supports to be able to pocket you. And you can fully kite out, because that's all they have in their entire arsenal. And so as long as you don't die and you have both bubbles for yourself if you're dropping cart. And then kind of the same into, I think, let's look at the third point.
I've got you in my sight.
I actually haven't looked at your POV or how you were playing the third point. But I know for sure. Yeah, okay. The Genji definitely, he was rushing engages, and also Magic Marker, our Curie, wasn't properly helping take space, so it made your job really hard, where it was just like you versus the Doom and nothing in between. So I don't think that's too hard on you. It's a very technical map where if some players aren't playing very nicely, then for you it ends up being really, really rough. Let me watch how you're playing this. I think you do play it really well. I remember you clearing the high ground for Levi. And then we have our Ashe up here, but then our Curie and Genji don't mark right, and so our Ana gets contested, and it ruins the position. But yeah, for the most part, you were playing this really well.
Yeah, I don't know. I find this map always just be difficult for me in general. Like, I feel like even in just ranked, just nothing ever goes right.
I feel like trusting, just understanding that if you have the strong neutral on this map, you really don't need to do much other than, because all they're going to do is in 2 seconds try to get you off the strong neutral, which is the high grounds. So if you have the strong position, all you need to do is deflect their 2 seconds of effort of getting you off, which is the Doom and the Genji, or sorry, the Tracer. And so if they don't get you off, you can just kind of chill and just stand still, and you're going to break through with ults eventually. If not sooner, which probably sooner, because you have your Ashe just frying them if you're properly protecting her. Or she can get punched off, but she should be able to get support from her supports and walk back up, or coach back up. And then same thing from over here, where your Ashe is just still frying. The soldier's probably not going to kill her, and even if he does mark her, we have the Ana. And then our Genji is simply like an extension of helping you. And the carry is an extension of the Genji, so they're flexible to cover the spots where you can't physically go. For example, the Tracer's route over here. But your main job is it's already fulfilled when you're on the high ground after your team gets to the high ground. So there's a lot of like just chill and don't put yourself in risky situations because your team will end up carrying for you. So kind of like laid back, you've already put in the work. Let's look at the next map. Circuits and then Numbani. I'd rather look at Numbani. And then where is it? Okay, so this one is very hard on you because it sets a lot of the responsibilities. The defense was good. We just played the neutral and they weren't able to break through. The attack is where you need to set the tempo and scout and identify how you play with your Bastion. This entire comp is pretty much enable the Bastion, and so figure out how they disable the Bastion, and then you can use your Bastion to completely disarm them. So like in this comp, how are they keeping your Bastion at bay?
I just spam just Junkrat, Sigma, BAP on the top right there. It's just hard to get through.
Mm-hmm. And then how are you going to enable your Bastion?
I guess try to force cooldowns and then just walk together when we have the advantage.
Yeah. So it's as soon as possible, as soon as you get the space trade on the Sigma, just walk out. And so if the Sigma does anything, or for example, he's using a shield, you guys can just sit here and soak damage and just not die to the Junkrat mines. But as soon as he uses his eat, you can use that and force the enemies to make a decision. And when you start pushing through, shield behind him, tell your team to walk forward. You guys have a ton of damage. If he doesn't have his eat, we can form and push them out immediately. And all that's keeping us back is the Junkrat spamming inside the choke. But when they don't have that, and when we're out, we have lamp for anything else that comes at us. And we also have your like just pure presence of standing in front, and the Bastion will flush everyone off the high ground. So we have like literally a window of opportunity of like 1 or 2 seconds. Because if we don't walk out, Sigma's gonna have his eat again. By the time that we have our next form. And so if he's able to stay up top, his next eat will like cement us in the grave 6 feet under, back inside the chokehold. So why I was calling so adamantly for us to walk out here is because the rest of your team can't do anything unless we set the tempo. And as soon as he's done eating, just say, okay, walk with form. You shield that Junkrat, and that's the only thing that'll keep your team in the chokehold. We come out, even if we have to use a lamp and the shift, probably just the shift or just the lamp. You rock the Sig if he tries rocking you, or if he tries playing up, you walk past and rock him. If he rocks you, that's fine, we have lamp. And none of them can stay in the open, especially that Junkrat on this side when our Bastion is out and they have no eat. If they only use rock, it's a little bit different of a story where we have to break his shield and then force the eat. And then you can set the tempo with whatever cooldowns you have, or just wait for the next set. Otherwise, in the neutral, if we're like constantly trying to break through and never break through, we always get our sun and our window up first. Even though they get tired, we trade it for the trade it for the lamp.
Okay.
And so it needs to be very proactive where, as you can see, if we actually used our lamp, and then also if you're proactive about this, or if we push out at the exact same time, right as the Sigma uses his eats, use the lamp to save our soldier. This Sigma gets forced down, we stabilize. Yeah, he misses the lamp on both the DPS, which is not good. They get forced out, and then we stabilize here, and then there's nothing that the enemies can do to us afterwards.
I think we would have won this fight. I just got my rock cancelled by like a third of a second, and if my rock hit, we would have killed the Sigma and probably would have been able to win the fight. So, I don't know.
Either kill the Sigma or he has to drop, and then that's game over for them.
Yeah.
And then for you, I want you to be like the CEO of talking, where if there's any coordination that our team needs with the TP, you're coordinating it because you're the one who's like the catalyst of like, I'm gonna make this space so we can use the TP. So make sure that you're well, in this situation our team didn't take it, but very commonly for tanks, it's literally like babysitting. You have to like hard accommodate for your team to be able to take this TP. And you have to babysit them and make sure that they're all taking the TP and being like, okay, are we ready to take the TP? If your Bap and Lucio say yes, or if no one says no, then you're like, okay, we're going for it. I'm going out in 3, 2, 1, walking. Let's look for the TP. And your sim will say, okay, TPing 3, 2, 1, go. But it all starts, and it's a very small thing. But once it clicks, if you're calming very well, it'll just click, and things will just start to fall into place, and it'll go like so much easier than this, like, because it's a very binary, we take the TP together or we scuff the TP. And it's one of those like elementary things where it's just like we need to get it down every single time. So if you're very good at calming and you have very clear, concise comms that make sense at the time, you know, if you don't have shield and you're not ready to push and you ask for TP, then it's going to be bad. But same thing with the second time that we tried this TP on the bottom. Also this here, where if we're dead, okay. Oh, you cancel his... I didn't see that you canceled his flux, to be honest.
I got mine canceled too.
Yeah. Nonetheless, this was a winnable fight, but I would err on the side of caution, where... Did our Lucio beat first? Did we call this? Oh yeah, he doesn't play Lucio, that's right. So you kind of got baited into it by your team. But if we don't have our BAP and our Bastion, we're down 2. Let's just save ults and call it for the next. I would say even like when we're up here. Oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. But at the very beginning, when we get caught out in this awkward position, we need to just look to TP and get back to the team, or stop the stagger and get out. Or I mean die. So like just literally just jump off the cliff if it's not working out, so then we can just get into the next team fight. Otherwise we can like, yeah, it's a rough situation because it's not optimal to fight this 3v5 at all. We're probably not going to find the picks, and even if our BAP and Bastion get back, it's going to be very minimal value without your team there.
Okay. And what about like the comp? Like, should I even be playing Sigma here, or?
Yeah, I wanted us to play the Sigma to be able to burst through the top. I think with the Lucio, it's really awkward. Yeah, on this map, it's fucked. Numani is fucked for Overwatch 2, the 5v5, because you don't have your off tank to help you. But if we're swapping to the Bastion Sim, I would say go Ryan. It's really fucky, but we kind of just have to open up the map for a Bastion, and the more that you can pocket the Bastion, the better we'll do at that. Yeah. Otherwise, because if we go Queen, it's just unbearable. unless we TP on a specific target that has no mobility, which they kind of all have mobility except for the Alari, and even then the Alari can drop and reposition. But since you had your ult, or you were close to your ult, I guess it's okay to not switch. Just because we're just trying to break the map open with the TP. I think more importantly, we should just be thinking about, like, instead of playing in the neutral, finding that one opportunity to break through. Since we're on offense now and we don't have the strong position, we just need to break through, find the strong position on a high ground, or getting them off of the high grounds and claiming a high ground. And using your team, because you have like full control of the team right now. You are like the CEO of calming, like I said, or like the Pokemon trainer of the team, commanding everyone to do your bidding to be able to open the map, like your fight plan.
Me and Jacob were talking about it. It was like the tanks are the puppet masters, and then like everyone else is the puppets.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that really is how it is. And then everyone else provides you with tools on like going in. So, for example, the main support will ult track for you, tell you what ults they have, and then you look at what ults you guys have, and you'll decide how you want to play that fight. Because if you choose main, they have to go main. Otherwise, they lose, and then you yell at them, and I yell at them. So you won't even have to yell at them. You smile and say it wasn't my fault, and then I'll yell at them.
I kind of inted here. I just went for a panic dive, but
Yeah. I think, what is our Curie doing as well? We didn't have a full setup for the dive. Yeah, we didn't even have time to charge Nano either. And then we didn't clear top left or take top left and have this space here in the first place, or trade cooldowns with the soft dive. So, yeah, I don't think we really need to talk about that. That's like for another time.
okay.
And then Relter and Umbani circuits. You can go over circuit. I think you were playing pretty well on circuit, like you were saying. I'm gonna make sure that it was like purposeful. So, yeah, when we're on this comp, the one thing that I would say is for you, support our team on the high grounds by holding the high grounds and providing as much resistance for them to get into it. But know that they're going to break your shield immediately and that you're going to have to drop main. But kite into the high grounds to begin with, so then their Sigma doesn't immediately take it.
Okay.
Because if we look at like your Sojourn and Widow, like this map is like this is the farthest that you can get from You Are the Puppet Master, where it's like these guys are the presidents and all you need to do is protect the president, because if Levi has angles, they're done for. If Levi and Statics don't have angles, then nothing happens. So all you're doing is like fighting for your Widow to have a good angle. And if they're denying the high ground here, this is the only angle that your Widow has. And then, even though that we will have to give up this high ground because that's just how this map is structured. We're standing up here is terrible, but you're eventually gonna drop back and play this corner. But the more time that we can stall doing that, and the longer, or yeah, pretty much the more time that we can stall doing that, the more opportunities your DPS are gonna have. And then also the more time on the clock. So this is good. I would say, yeah, okay, there's really nothing much to mention. You're marking the Widow, now you're marking the Sigma. Just always be like hard marking the Sigma if he has no cooldowns. Or forcing the cooldowns and pushing the advantage. I think if we go to... There are a couple of micro mistakes, if I remember, on the first point defense that led to your death. This is good, holding the high ground before they go down and then playing here. Yep. This was a really nice flux. I like how you waited into the mid fight to start the flux, and then we retook the space with it. Yes.
Oh yeah, I wasted my shift here. I remember that.
Yeah, here where you're taking the offensive positioning, and also they have ults this fight. So if you don't have your shift and they use the window, you're fucked. So, and then also Hero Bob did not trank for you, which is tragic. But optimally we ult track it, and then that means for you have to realize the ult tracking. So knowing that they have the ults is one thing, but actually using, like, for example, if they have flux, you're hard saving your rock. If they have window, you're trying to hard save your shift. Dragon-ish, you can hard save your shift, but you're probably not going to eat it. So, and being aware that, like, the dragon will cut you, or the dragon will, like, screw with one of your angles, so that you're able to stabilize, for example, statue, or just give space and, like, hard kite. Because if they dragon you here, it doesn't really matter. Your DPS still have all the space, so then you can back up all the way, or just full LOS and hug. So it comes down to, like, the really small things. See, I think our second point offense, yeah, and third point offense as well, were what I wanted to talk about. Your first point offense was very good. You were doing everything right, and then Levi was popping off, so you were enabling him very well. This is good. This is fine. In the neutral, when we pick the Torbjorn pick, or if it's a Soj, or if it is anything other than Hanzo, and even with the Hanzo, the one thing I want you to do on this point is just make space and, like, hard focus this Sig. Make sure that he isn't able to do anything. And make him use his ult, make him use everything, make them use lamp to keep this corner. But do everything in your power to make that guy's life miserable. You don't have to mark the enemy DPS, your DPS will do that. As long as you get the space so we can push through that choke, it is what we want. And then you have, like, a micro moment where you peak with 1 HP and get blown up here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think you committed way too hard to that push. I mean, your supports did miss the lamp. But after you used your shield, and then, because I can tell that you knew that you were, like, once you wide swung out, you're like, I fucked up. I can kind of see it in, like, the way you were aiming at the Sig.
Yeah, I used my shield to, like, get to cover the high ground because they had a widow, and I just didn't. I wasted my shift, and I didn't have anything for myself, so I just died.
Let's see. In your play, when you're pushing in here, I want you to be as greedy as possible in the neutral. After you get this rock, if you can stabilize, just stabilize. There's no need to repeak. There's no need to rush this engagement. All we need to do is get you through. You don't need kill pressure or anything. We just need you to get through to the high ground. So if you're just waiting and you're shooting the Sig, or if you don't want to peek, we can just wait around the cart. And your DPS will get the message, because it'll be like, I can't peek unless my Sig is peeking, so I'm just going to wait. But forcing your cooldowns here when you don't get a really good value out of your cooldowns, for example, you're just shifting kind of just like, oh, I want to push forward, I'm just going to shift. Versus if you're just defaulting to shooting him in main here, you're going to force him to shift, or you're going to force the enemies to use something to make yourself shift and get more value out of the shift. But essentially, one thing that I'm going to be emphasizing a lot, because I noticed most of the teams, I kind of ratted a little this last, like, couple of months watching as many OD teams and volunteer coaching for them as possible. But the biggest mistake is they lose space because they use cooldowns too early. And they don't greed their cooldowns to get maximum value. And so if you just think, like, can I hold my cooldown to get even more value later? Unless you have, like, the perfect perfect moment. For example, like you rock the Sig when he's pushing up with his eat. This is like one of those perfect moment opportunities. Or like you're shielding the angle up top. Where is this? Yeah, right here. Where the Sig, his barrier is down. Where even when his barrier is down, you don't need to rock him. You can just walk in and keep on shooting him. And then if you get low from the enemy DPS, you can just completely unpeak and set the tempo by being so potentially threatening to the enemy. And then this guy has to make the decision. Use his abilities and fuck up because you're behind a corner, so you can always unpeak. And then you re-peak, and when you get your shield back, it's the domino effect of you're gonna like hard take the space in the 1v1. You're gonna hard win this 1v1 because he won't have his rock, so you can free shift when you get low. And then when his shield breaks, he has to shift to keep up, or they have to lamp, and you still have that corner to any of these corners to set the tempo. So it's more of like a philosophy rather than the actionable decisions, because it's like such a tiny difference between every decision of like when you're taking this, when you're doing like what you want to do. But it'll manifest itself eventually where, like, for example, let's look at this when we were stuffing them in the choke. I think you played this one pretty well. It is overtime, or not overtime, but like last point, so they have to touch. Or maybe I remember this moment as being like a very critical moment. Oh yeah, this is where you get a really good flux. The third point, I think the one thing that you struggle with the most is setting up, and setting up rotations and conducting rotations. So like using your team, because you're really good in the neutral, where the only thing that I would really hone you on is like, for example, greeting your abilities, understanding the win con, and understanding when you can greed and when you need to push forward and make something happen. And then you'll start really, really diffing the enemy players and playing more like a contenders player rather than like a comp grinder. But when it comes to when we get stuck like this, it should be a good indication. Either you can memorize every single rotation and every single instance of like, we're on this team comp against their team comp on this map in this certain position where the cart is here, so we need to take this rotation and take the time investment. Or whenever you get stuck and you can't push through, it's probably because you need to go on the rotation. And so if you conduct your team where once we get the cart to the like no man's land, which is like at this corner, where if their Sig backs up, he's always defending the cart, and there's no way that we're pushing through with this on this high ground against us. And we can't take that high ground because our, no one can get up there without like getting an insane pick. But again, like greeting the cooldowns where it's like, you don't need to rock this Hanzo, you can just kill him. You can kill him without the rock, and then like just keep on pushing forward, where this is so easy. And then like when their Sig is just like fucked up behind this corner, when he has no shield, when he has to eat or give all the space, you have your rock for this, and you're just greeting your cooldowns. And then like also just greeting the shield, where it's like if the Widow isn't peeking, you don't need your shield, and if you're not at 100 health or like 200 health, you don't need your shield at all. So that'll be the difference between taking the space here and not. But once we regroup and get stuck at this chokehold again, I'd really like us to see either walking up here to default, or if you get stuck at either one of these places, get your team around and get your team to go around the side, which we realize, but we realize like a bit too far, where I like us to just do sooner. And then, so like going back to like greeting your cooldowns and playing for the neutral. If you're getting forced out like this, we have the tempo so hard because we have such a nice position on this high ground where you don't need to do anything other than get re-healed by your Baptiste. And what that does is you will have full cooldowns here. Let's say you didn't use Eat. Their Sigma cannot push forward because you're just going to diff him. If he tries to rock you, you shield. If he tries to shield, we burn it and LOS their core. If he tries to shift, you have your rock. And so it's like he has to fully back up, and he fucks up because his positioning is up here. He has to use something, or they have to use something. And if you're playing it perfectly, which, like, lazily, honestly, like, if you're just not using your abilities and using it only for, like, the obvious times, then they're forced to either trank to keep their Sigma up, and this is, like, playing a really strong macro neutral, where it's not even about the ults anymore, it's about just understanding how to get them and how to punish them. They're going to be forced to either play in this room or give up all space to play out here. And that's going to translate to, like, fight over fight, actionable wins, where you're seeing, like, an actual roll onto the enemies. It's a very small thing, but... And just to emphasize again, the reason why I want you to greed your cooldowns here is because we have the tempo set so hard against them. Whereas if they, for example, were on high ground, they would have the tempo really well against us because they have a really strong position. But they're forfeiting the strong position by playing on the low ground and giving us this really strong high ground. Or not even really strong high ground, they're enabling it to be a really strong high ground. And then especially if, like, we have someone taking space over here, that's just yet another way where you can, like, just play slow and not need to make anything happen because it's just happening on its own. And then that way you can use your kit to deny their when they want to make something happen, so then you can just keep on making stuff happen on your own. So this isn't... Oh yeah, this is where our BAP doesn't rotate. Okay, that's... Who was it that didn't rotate? Yeah, the fucking Baptiste. Okay, yeah, so you have a really strong high ground, so up here it's like... Would you really use your rock? Not really, unless you get, like, a guaranteed hit. But, when you get that guaranteed hit, it's like the difference between... pushing through and not pushing through. I don't know where I was going with this. Again, so whenever we're in situations where we're, like, hard winning... Are we hard winning? Just saving your cooldowns, because there's no use in, like... Just wait for the enemies to fuck up. Because if they don't fuck up, that means that they're not taking... Or wait for the enemies to present you with an opportunity to do something. And it should be easy for us, because they're playing into us and we're setting the tempo. So using your rock, using your shields even, where if you're not shielding a sniper, for example the Hanzo, or if you're not shielding the Baptiste off, or the Zenyatta, we can play this really easily and just let them come into us, let them have to use everything to try to just hold the cart space. Otherwise, we're just walking through. And then, if the enemies are smart, they'll use their strong high ground, and then it flips it on us, where we actually have to do stuff now. And that's where you would start using your shift and your rock proactively, and trying to find opportunities and make opportunities. Otherwise, they're going to always be giving you opportunities to use your cooldowns. And, like, to, like, level up as a player and becoming even, like a godly player would be, instead of memorizing, being very adaptive and understanding that if they're not on the strong angles here, or if you take the strong angles from them, for example, their Hanzo is distracted here, so you don't need to make anything happen, you never have to use your rock until they need to touch, or until it's a guaranteed rock on an enemy, where you can just, where the Baptiste is just, like, standing out in the open, and then you only need to use your shift just to stay on the cart. But because they're not making use of the strong high ground, you won't default to it, and you're playing and just basically punishing them and letting the ball roll on its own, rather than spending any of your energy, which gives them an opportunity to do something. Is there one of the other two maps that you wanted to go more in detail on, or do you have any questions about that map?
For the Gibraltar game when we were doing first point attack,
Mhm.
do you ever want us to like path top like all like by wrapping around through server? Because that was our call, and
Mhm.
I think it worked, but I don't think you like mentioned it at all.
Okay. So let's talk about why the server pathing is good, and then why up top is not good, or why like it's very situational. So the reason why people like the server pathing is because it cuts off more angles from the map. So like the top down. If you only have this blue box, then they can play in the server and they can flank you, and they get like this area to play at. Versus if you take server, your supports are like super solid, and you get this line here where they have to contest and you have open sightlines on the contest. But for us, I think because you're on Zarya and you're not mobile, and even better, we have our Kiriko and our Tracer to be able to take these sidelines and clear them out first. I'd much rather have Levi up top here on the blue box, shredding them on cart, and we have a really strong point presence. So they need to commit, or the trade onto our Ana is so much worse for them here on the blue box. Um, or not so much worse. It's like it's the same, but it costs us less. Um, we have a more offensive position with the same amount of risk, so there's just more upside to this position. Whereas if they're on like a full dive comp, then I would say we need our Ana in here to be able to like peel back into the mega. But because they don't have Monkey Genji Tracer or like, and especially an Ana for a Bionade, because this position is very susceptible to being naded, we can just abuse this high ground. And if you start the neutral up here, again, where it's like a very strong position, we have the strong high ground. They're shooting you. It's you're never gonna get bursted enough until the Doom goes in, or if they're not diving you, you're never gonna get bursted down to where you're like in deathly range because the Ash is always going to be marking. If the Doom does dive you, he gives up space on cart where our Tracer and Curie are going to be pressuring, and even if he gets a lot of value after your bubble, one bubble to keep your Ana alive, or a bubble for yourself and your Ana, the Doom has to reset and get out, and Levi's going to go straight back into the enemies, force him out, go straight back into contesting the high ground. And you probably will have full charge. Otherwise, it was like a terrible engage from their Doom. And you can either make the decision to push forward here and go in with your Tracer and Curie, or you can look to just force cart with your Tracer and Curie, because he's going to have to default to cart, or someone's going to have to default to cart. If it's the Tracer, she gets dueled on a 1v2 or 2v1 on cart. If it's the Doom and he's trying to stabilize on cart, you're just going to go down there and shred him. Or you can just stay up and wait until, like, if he's like hard stabilizing on cart and he used his block already, you can just walk down there and shred him, and like life is good. Otherwise, if he's like coming back and stabilizing over here, you can just sit on high ground and like stand there and be pretty, because your Kiriko Tracer are going to be like having a really fun time setting up 2v1s over on the side or pressuring the enemies, and then it'll be very obvious for you, like, okay, I can go in here, or I can look to like bubble their engage, or on the cart, and then Levi will just be absolutely frying the enemies, because he has a free pocketed Ana with all of the cooldowns needed to be able to like, he has free dynamite onto the high ground and free 1v1s because he's always getting a pocket. That is after the Doom engages. So going into server instead would mean for our team, Levi's going to have this angle, which it's about the same. The only reason why I don't like this angle as much is because we don't have the high ground for our Ana to be able to like pressure the cart as much. Even though they can hide back here, it's terrible for them because we have like full control over here, and then we can always drop down if needed, and then resend our Ana over here. For the most part, it's about like the mobility and sightlines for you as a tank player. So enabling yourself where it's like you have to pressure cart and there's no ability to especially since you're not on Monkey or Diva, there's no ability to pressure up here in the first place. And it's more so like slightly better for our Ashe and Ana, which you're defaulting to in the first place. So you'd be like over here like waiting for them to engage forever with no upside to do anything. And then for you to charge your bubbles, you have to walk out and like hope that they shoot you on the cart and to build your charge so you can be a threat to the Doom. Whereas if we're up here, they have to engage in, because you have the threat of going in or dropping cart, and you're also within range to actually get value.
Okay.
That was a really, really poor way of explaining it, but yeah, that took like 10 minutes longer than it had to. But do you have any questions about the first point then?
No, that was really in depth. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, do you have any other questions about
No,
the teams in general, or?
Oh, like the team. I mean, like you're still gonna want me to trial, right?
Yeah. I think next Wednesday, unless it fills up with tank trials, and then even then, I'm looking for either Tuesday or Wednesday. If it fills up with tank trials, then we're probably gonna have a second scrim where I want you playing again, and then I want to see how you improve with the feedback, and then I can also have a more dedicated session where I look at your micro and go into more detail about, like, for example, how to greed your abilities or how to create an advantage on the enemy tank to better roll space, and create stronger neutrals for your team, like creating space in places and times where it matters, rather than just like the fight plans, because this is like, it's like foundation to get there, because it doesn't matter if you do that if we're not setting ourselves up to capitalize on it. So that'll probably be what's coming next week, if not just another round of trials where I'm trying other players with you and seeing like synergies.
Okay.
Yeah. So expect to be playing at least in the next 2 weeks. At worst case scenario, it's in the next 2 weeks. At the best case scenario, it's twice next week, or 3 times next week, and then 3 times the week after that as well.